Imagine a world without central authority where countries prioritize their own survival and power. This is the core idea of realism, a dominant theory in international relations. We'll explore its history, key principles, and why it's still relevant today, even with its critics. Realism roots go back centuries. Thinkers like Thucydides, grappling with power struggle in ancient Greece, laid the foundation. The rise of modern nation-states further solidified this focus on country as the main players. Then came World Wars and Cold War, highlighting a limitation of idealistic approaches. Hans Morgenthau emerged as a leading figure, advocating for a clear-eyed view of international politics.
Realism emphasized competition among states in an anarchic system. Morgenthau's 6 principles include the idea that politics is driven by a constant struggle for power and that states prioritize national interests, often defined in terms of power. Hence, morality often takes a backseat to security concerns. Critics argue realism is too focused on conflict and overlooks cooperation. They point to the growing influence of non-state actors like international organizations and multinational corporations. The emphasis on national interests is seen as hindering solutions to global challenges like climate change. Nonetheless, it offers valuable insights where the competition between the US and China highlights the ongoing struggle for power, and the Ukraine crisis showcases the limitation of international law when powerful states are involved. However, the rise of non-state actors and the need for global cooperation on issues like pandemics challenge some core realist assumptions. Now let's see how realism sheds light on the Russo-Ukrainian War. Realists argue that Russia's invasion stemmed from perceived security threats. Ukraine's potential NATO membership and Western ties are seen as a direct danger. Offensive weapons near Russia's borders, they say, could threaten its security and access to the Black Sea, a vital warm water port. At its core, realism says states prioritize survival and can't be sure of other states' intentions. This is the self-help principle in an anarchic world. When one state strengthens its security, the others might feel threatened. Mearsheimer believes Russia seeks obedient buffer states and favorable security arrangements on its borders. This goal, he argues, is directly challenged by NATO expansion, especially the possibility of Ukraine hosting offensive forces. This view downplays ideological conflicts and prioritizes Russia's security concerns. Some really see the invasion as a case of offensive realism. This school argues states naturally seek to maximize power. It pushes debates on power dynamics, cooperation in anarchy, and balancing power to maintain order. Here, the focus is on Russia actively pursuing regional dominance and power. The invasion is seen as an opportunistic move to redraw European borders and exploit perceived Western weaknesses. From a new realist perspective, the invasion is a challenge to the US-dominated liberal international order. It highlights Russia's concern about NATO expansion and a lack of respect for its interests. This view suggests Russia seeks to overthrow the Western-centric global order and become a powerful force influencing other countries. The analysis also consider how Russia's domestic politics influence its choices. The diversionary war theory suggests Putin might have used the conflict to distract from internal issues like political and economic crisis. Additionally, the concept of autocratic insecurity argues that leaders like Putin might take aggressive actions abroad to solidify their legitimacy and maintain their grip on power. The invasion then could be seen as Putin projecting himself as a strong leader protecting ethnic Russians in Ukraine.
The Nagorno-Karabakh conflicts offer another case study for realism. Remember, realism highlights the national security, self-interest, and competition in an anarchic world. Throughout the 20th century, power dynamics, balance of power, and alliances have often dictated conflict resolution. Here, Armenia and Azerbaijan clashed over territory, unsurprising from a realist perspective. Historically, wars have been a common way to settle disputes. Even in the post-Cold War era, realpolitics or power politics remains relevant. Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh, backed by Armenia and Russia, seized the region from Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan saw this as an attack on their heritage. On the surface, might makes right seems to hold true. Armenia's strength came partly from Russia backing. Turkey's fear of Russia limited its support for Azerbaijan despite their close ties. External actors play a significant role. Turkey, citing cultural and strategic interests, provided crucial military aid to Azerbaijan in the 2020 war, a key factor in their victory. Russia's involvement is complex, balancing historical ties with Armenia, strategic interests, and relation with Azerbaijan. They act as peacekeeper, have an economic interest, and counter Western influence. Classical realism, as proposed by Hans Morgenthau, emphasized the pursuit of power for survival, security, and dominance. Armenia's support for Nagorno-Karabakh Armenians strengthened its positions against Azerbaijan, and this aligned with realism. However, the situation is more nuanced. Historical narrative and national identities of both Armenia and Azerbaijan are deeply linked to Nagorno-Karabakh, even though it lacks strategic importance. This goes beyond a purely realist understanding of power. Both sides have historical claim to the territory, shaping their national identities. This narrative fuel emotions and complicate a purely realist power-based solutions. Negotiations haven't yielded lasting peace, as historical grievance and ethnic identity remain unresolved.
Realism is all about states chasing power in a free-for-all world, which is pretty useful for explaining wars that were and are happening. But the world's more than just states these days. So here's the deal. Realism is great for understanding why countries fight over stuff, but it's not the whole picture. We need the other theories like constructivism and liberalism to understand the dynamics of the world we live in. Basically, understanding countries' interests is important, but so is global cooperation and the power of non-state actors.